Good afternoon, and welcome to this special Women Behind the Music edition of the ASCAP Experience. Ladies, thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. On behalf of ASCAP, I just want to thank you for your contributions to the music industry and the entertainment industry, and to say congratulations. We are so honored to be able to celebrate the three of you this afternoon. We're going to start by just having the three of you, if I may, introduce yourselves and tell us a little bit about what you're doing right now in terms of your careers.
Well, again, thank you for having me, Nicole, and ASCAP. I am currently head of urban music and strategy at Columbia Records. I have been there almost 3 years now. So my job, as I see it, is to kind of be a catch-all to make sure that we are interfacing internally and externally to elevate the urban artist, their brand narrative, and also the urban narrative of Columbia Records. And also internally making sure that not only externally the brand is reflecting the urban space and what is needed to make sure these artists are successful.
Thank you. Alicia, how about you?
Hi, Nicole. Thank you so much for having me. So I'm an entertainment attorney, and I represent on the recording side, recording artists, producers, and songwriters. And I think I've been doing so over 10 years now.
Awesome. Jamila?
Hi, I'm Jamila Thomas. Thank you so much, ASCAP and everybody for having me. I am currently Vice President of Marketing at Motown and also the co-founder of the Show Must Be Paused movement and organization. And I've been at Motown for about 6 months now.
Excellent. Congratulations. Now, ladies, the reason why this edition of our Women Behind the Music series is so special is because it's also our homecoming season edition. So we are rolling out a week-long celebration of homecoming season, and we're highlighting all of our amazing industry friends who have graduated from historically Black colleges and universities. As we know, October is homecoming month at HBCU. So we are having our own special celebration here at ASCAP. And you ladies happen to all be graduates of historically Black colleges and universities. So I just want to ask you, how your experience as students at HBCUs shaped your career paths and sort of shaped who you are today. Maybe we can start with Alicia.
Okay, well, attending Spelman College definitely informed what I'm doing now. I represent mostly Black and Latino artists and recording artists and producers and songwriters. And I think the most important attribute Spelman gave me was certainly confidence to go out and get what I wanted. It was a long road to get to entertainment law, especially coming from a corporate background. I was first living in Boston practicing securities law, and that's not what I intended to do at all. And when I left that job, I just came to New York with no prospects, and I just knocked on some doors with the confidence that I think I got from Spelman, and that you can do anything attitude that so many people instilled in me at Spelman, whether it was professors or graduates from Spelman. And I remember just making cold calls and selling myself to any entertainment attorney that would listen. And I remember when I was first in New York, Phylicia was there, you were hustling in your PR work, and we were all on the grind. But I remember thinking we had a community together in New York of people striving for their dreams. So Spelman was influential in that. But mostly, Spelman was instrumental in me going into thinking about entertainment law, because when I was a junior in high school, I used to watch BET, and the marching bands would come on, and during the football games. And I always thought, I want to be in a marching band. Now, at the time, I did not play any instruments, but I always loved the drum line. And someone said to me, I think it was one of my friends in high school, they said, why don't you just take drum lessons? I was like, you know what, you're right. So I went down to Berklee School of Music, and I met Little John Roberts, who is now like a famous drummer. And he was my first drum instructor. So by the time I got to Spelman, I said, you know what, I want to join the marching band. So I marched on over to Morehouse College, and I was like, can I be in the marching band? And they looked at me, they were like, have you been in the marching band before? I said, nope. And they were like, all right, well, let's just see what you can do. And I tried out for the Morehouse Marching Band. They threw me in there, and I had the best experience ever. I thought, what other school could I have done that? Just rolled up to a marching band with limited skills and said, can I play? But that was the beauty of HBCUs. I think the teachers, the professors, the staff, everyone there is very accommodating of people's dreams and just desires to try things. And it was the drum, I forget what they call it, no, the band director. The band director just looked at me like, whatever, girl, let's just see what you can do. And I was terrible. I didn't know how to march and play at the same time. But by the end of the season, all the guys in Morehouse were teaching me how to play those cadences because I couldn't really read music well, but I could hear it. And I remember being over on campus every other day in somebody's room trying to listen and learn these cadences so I could be involved in the drum line when we have the competitions against the other bands. And then in the following year, I discovered Spelman had a jazz ensemble. I was like, what? You know, this is what I learned to play on this jazz, a whole trap set. When I was at work, taking those lessons with Bill John Elmer at Berkeley. When I found that out, I joined the jazz ensemble, and I wasn't great either. But Mr. Jennings, the jazz ensemble director, he actually hired a drum instructor to get me up to speed so that I could play all the songs when the Spelman Jazz Ensemble went on tour during March, which is Women's Music Month. So I remember traveling all over the country, playing in a jazz band. We recorded CDs. I thought, this is amazing. How can I be down? So I definitely thought of careers in music just because of those two experiences at Spelman, which I am pretty sure I would not have experienced anyplace else. Mainly because maybe it was because we were in a smaller environment, but I think again, it also goes back to everyone trying to help students fulfill dreams.
Phylicia, how about you?
Yes, Alicia, touched on a lot of things that make Spelman so special, but if you don't know, you probably will know, because if you meet my mom, she will tell you, but she went to Spelman. So I remember saying, I'm going to go to Howard. It was always me going to an HBCU. That was never something that was not going to happen. I grew up in Marietta, Georgia, and I often just saw myself in classrooms, if that makes sense. And so what Spelman brought me first was the idea of legacy, right? And the importance of having legacy and tradition. And that bond is something that just can't be broken. Knowing that you can go back and historically be like, my best friend's daughter now goes to Spelman. It's this legacy, it's Goldie's daughter who went to Spelman. It's Joni's daughter going to Spelman. So I have all these friends now seeing their daughters as juniors and seniors at Spelman. And so seeing that legacy and that love is something that you just can't take away. But there's also this thread of what Alicia said is Black and brown, those are the artists that I also represent. So there's this level of social impact that's naturally in me, because you're on a campus that's constantly teaching you about, self-reflection, self-identity, how to make sure we're protecting our space and our legacies in this environment. So when you're dealing with the HBCU experience, you're also bringing with that this code of independence and making sure that we historically continue to promote our artists in a very positive way, right? And so with social impact, legacy, and I think, again, this screen of Black women, Spelman is historically a college for Black women. So you start to see yourselves differently, right? If you're only seeing a reflection of yourself in one space, but then you go to this place where there's no longer this monolithic idea of what a Black woman should look like, and now it's the diaspora in front of you, there's this pride of understanding, like regionally and globally, that we are everywhere making a difference. So I feel like it's the network, it's the social impact, but it's also just knowing that as a Black woman, I can show up in this space now and be confident. And I can say that it's hard sometimes as Black women to go in these spaces. And like you said, I remember the first time I started wearing braids again. I know that sounds crazy, but it's like, am I in corporate America? Can I do that? I was like, my mom was like, you sure can. And it's knowing that you can, because your voice doesn't change, your thoughts about yourself don't change, your confidence doesn't change. If anything, your swag should be that much more, embedded in you because of this sisterhood around you. So that would be my summary of what an HBCU means to me.
That was great. Jamila, how about you?
Yes, I went to Clark Atlanta University.
AUC.
AUC. And I started at Morgan State, actually, and I wanted to go a little further from home. I was like, not quite far enough, because I'm from New York. And I went down to Atlanta and fell in love with the city, the culture, just the people. And I was so intrigued by the Atlanta University Center, how it was Morehouse, Spelman, and Clark Atlanta at the time. Morris Brown had just shut down. And they were like connected. It was literally sharing the same buildings, the same campus. It was like where, you know, School Days was filmed. It was just very nostalgic. And I grew up on a different world. So at a very young age, I knew like, oh, okay, I'm going to be Whitley. I'm going to a HBCU. Like, this is what I'm going to do. And I have family members who graduated from Lincoln University, et cetera. So I knew I wanted to go to one. And I knew that I felt like that would be one of the times in my life where, like was said here, that I was able to be around Black and brown people all going for the same goal. I know when I go into the workforce and the quote unquote real world, you know, that's a very rare opportunity to just be and grow with your own people, right? In an environment that is nurturing and encourages you to identify with your true self and really, you know, own it. And I feel like it was a pivotal point in my life. And the school's motto, "I'll find a way or make one," never left me. And I still follow that model to this day. And it was instrumental because you had Disturbing the Peace Records in Atlanta, you had Def Jam South. I mean, the homecomings were crazy, where I was doing homecomings by my sophomore year, you know, planning the concerts and things like that. I knew right out the gate that was the end goal, to work in music. I just had to figure out how, but I don't think I would be where I am at all without the influence of Atlanta and Clark Atlanta University. It definitely shaped my future.
Excellent. Thank you so much. You know, each of you talked about sisterhood and support and encouragement, and those are the things that you got from your schools. Can you talk about the importance of sisterhood and support and encouragement amongst women in the music industry and why that's so important?
Oh, it's key. I think every move I've made in my professional career has been through a connection with a woman. I remember at one point I dipped out of the entertainment space and I was making handbags. I had a whole handbag design company, and Phylicia and her partner at the time hosted a party. And they said, you know, Alicia, I know you don't have any money because I was a startup company, but they said I could bring my bags and showcase at this event they put together. And I was like, bet, you know, thank you. Like, that's what I needed. I needed that door to be open. Another woman introduced me to Bob Celestin, who I work with now. And I mean, I can go on and on about the connections in the network that just came from women. Lynn Gonzalez, I remember interviewing with her years ago. And it was right when I had started the company. So I wasn't sure if I was making the move or not. But Lynn was there to offer a job. Like, it was incredible. So I think that it's very important that we all recognize that we need the support. And, you know, when they say fix your crown, like, or fix somebody else's crown, it's so true, because when I win, I'm going to help somebody else win. And it's Phylicia's win is my win. Jamila's win is my win, you know, and I think you learn that at an HBCU. It's not about being cutthroat and who can get rid of whom. And it's not about being the one and only special Black girl at the job, but having many and wanting there to be many. I don't want to be the only one. And that is drilled in you at these HBCUs. I mean, I went to Spelman, but, you know, again, Clark was across the street. Morehouse was on the other side. Morris Brown was behind us. It's that same message comes across at all HBCUs, that we're in this together, that it's all about supporting each other, because if one is successful, we're all successful. And one fails, then we're all failing.
So it kind of starts back to what Jamila said about just being in Atlanta and this music epicenter coming together, right? And once you heard about this music epicenter, then you're just looking to find ways to get into it. So it was like, I'm an English major, writing minor, but there's this thing called the music business and I got to figure it out. And I heard about this woman, Belana Williams, and she was putting together an all-female street team. So that was like my insertion into the music business, right? But then I heard this name, Shanti Das, who I didn't meet until 2008. But again, it's like this connected dot of women, right? You know, they know each other. How you get to them, you don't know, but you need to be part of this circle of women in music and culture that are making things happen. And so when I finally got to New York, I won't say the little thing that got in the way about that, but I finally got to New York and I was in the coffee shop and I was not working where I thought I was going to work anymore. The company went defunct. And my parents were like, are you moving back? You're an only child. It's dangerous. I'm like, nope, I am staying in New York City. My roommate at the time was working at IMG Models. So every morning I would go in with her and I would just sit at the coffee shop and do my resume. And I remember temping at a deco. And finally, this man came into the coffee shop. And, again, your New York senses come on. You're like, be careful. You don't know what's going on. Why does this man keep coming to you in the coffee shop? And he was like, I see you here every day doing your resume. I know someone at Universal. And I'm kind of like, I have sent my resume 6 times Universal. If they don't see this resume, then clearly they don't know how great I am. You can't believe that this is happening. But he's like, look, I know someone. So I give him my resume and he gives it to Katina Bynum. She is the head of marketing at the time at Cash Money. So again, a woman who does not know me, but takes this referral and gets me the interview with the HR department at Universal Records. So I start temping there before becoming full-time. And then my first boss, of course, was Serena Gallagher, a woman. But I want to bring this up, and I say this importantly because it goes into the word of allyship. Serena was not a woman of color. She is a white woman. And she said, I can teach you a lot of things, but as a Black woman in this industry, I want to start putting you with mentors that can help shape you. I can teach you publicity, but I can't teach you how to function as a Black woman. So she connected me with Nikessa Moody, who is now the editor of, a Hollywood Reporter, and Yvette Nolsher, who is Beyonce's publicist. So seeing allyship take place was really important too. And I can even remember Sharon Hayward, who was the first female manager I met. She had Brian McKnight at the time when I was doing tour press at Motown, and I was the first desk. And she came in and she was like, just make sure that you always have a clean area. Make sure that you always hold your head up, make sure you greet everybody because you're the first desk that people see when they come into Motown. And those little things come to you and they stick with you. But it's, again, all these females that become your tribe in your community because they want to see you win. And you have to be willing to take that criticism along the way and understand that this tough love and these antidotes of, just loving yourself and being present and holding your back up, and greeting people is a very simple thing to say, but it starts to shape the kind of woman you're going to identify yourself as in this music business. So I would say female mentorship and allyship have been really strong threads throughout my experience.
It's so funny because one of the names you just mentioned, Katina Bynum, was actually one of the people that pulled me in. I actually was her marketing coordinator for about 2-3 years. And one thing I took from her before I left was that it was never a hair out of place, always dressed for success, like down to the 9. She's a tall Black woman and always carried herself like a boss, right? And I felt like I took from there to dress for the job that I want, not the job that I have, right? So I made sure that I was pulled together because I wanted to stand next to my boss. So meetings, dinners, shows, I was at her hip, right? Because I dressed for the job. And I think it's important that we give women tools once they get in the building. And I Alicia just said, we're able to have a tribe, right? And these women have carried me my whole career and been a support system. Girls that I started with, we were assistants and interns. We're all still really close as senior executives, and we look out for each other and we root for each other and we post each other's releases, and go to each other's shows. And when someone gets nominated, we're like, okay, Grammy family, it's like a thing, right? Because we all have, no one can really teach you but another woman how to be a woman in the business. And, you can't do it by yourself. And I really think it's important to pull forward and reach back because someone did it for me. So I definitely wouldn't be where I am today. I remember quick story on how I met Phylicia, right? I was a intern at the time at Global Grind. And it was Ryan Leslie, I think. It was a listening. And I came to one, I made conversation. I got every invitation for anything she was doing moving forward. So I was able to come in with these exclusive pieces because I heard the project, and it's but at the time, it was important for me to have relationships. I was fresh from Atlanta, back in New York, trying to get in the music business. And I started interning at a blog, and that's when blogging was becoming a thing, right? I was not an editor. I just could write really well, right? But I had no experience being a journalist. And I think making that relationship at one listening opened a door for me to go to other listenings, right? And being able to show that I had relationships, and that relationship grew. I think you've seen me my whole career, at this point, to where I am now. So you just never know how, it comes full circle. I always think, not knowing that, it's an honor to get an award at the same time as Fhylicia, you just never know where life brings you. So I think that when you matriculate as a woman in a business, be nice to every assistant, intern, writer, coordinator, the person who brought your lunch, the girl at the front desk. You just never know who may be your boss one day or your ally. And it's important to remember that all we have is each other as women in the business.
I love this panel so much. I'm like getting goosebumps. It's crazy. Okay. So Jamila, you talked about tools, like having the right tools to be successful in this industry. So can each of you tell me one thing that you would tell your younger self starting out in this industry? One piece of advice you would give your younger self.
I would give my younger self the advice of just be patient, right? I am in a hybrid generation, I feel, right? Of the Instagram, social media, where people seem like they're like just matriculating overnight, right? And getting promoted. But I also come from the old school era at the same time where people worked at labels a really long time and worked their way up and they had 15 years on the job. And so it's a very fine in between space that I'm in. I will say, what I wish I could have told my younger self is your time is going to come. I didn't know 2021 was going to come, right? Back then, I just was like, when is it my turn? And you put a lot of pressure on yourself for these deadlines that you created, but it's not in your timing. You have no control over it. You have to keep your head down and do the work. Katina once told me, if you're looking left and right at what everybody's doing, how are you facing forward? How you focus on your journey. So that's the advice that I would have gave my younger self is like, focus on your journey, because your time will come.
I think to elaborate on what Jamila is saying about this new generation, what we're seeing is multi-hyphenates, right? And so I think that what I would told myself is it's okay to not know your next step, right? It's okay to understand that you might have to pivot. So what this role has taught me is that through connections, through hard work, of course, but also just seeing where the holes are, your career can manifest to places you really have no idea where it may even go because of being able to pivot and understand that, again, we have no control, right? We don't know what's going to happen. I think it's really important, even to what we're doing as women, to really understand mentorship, kind of going back to that, because having someone kind of sponsor you through your career is really important, because of these pivots, because of these doors that you're not sure how they open. I know I kind of went off track, but what I really want to say is it's important to understand that it's okay not to be in a box. It's okay to recognize that some opportunity may come up and just be prepared for it. But because you have no control over it, all you can do is make sure that you have the tools to pay attention to your environments so that you can see the holes, so that that position does open itself. You can go in and lock yourself and say, you know what, I think that's for me. I can add that to me, because going back to the point of being a multi-hyphenate and not wanting to be placed in a box, you have to be able to see everything going on around you to be able to strike when those opportunities present themselves. So I hope that's a long way of saying just prepare for the pivot.
Which is so important. Being able to pivot, right? Like being able to be flexible and pivot is key, critical.
Right. Jamila, literally, she said, I was global grind. I am now one of the most sought out executives, and I started a movement. That's a big thing to say. And there's no way you're thinking that. So yes, it's the pivot. It's preparing for the hole that may open itself, so.
Yeah. Alicia, how about you?
Well, two things come to mind for my younger self. I would say the network. When people tell you network, you don't really know, what does that really mean? It just means develop relationships so that when you dip out for 2 years, you can come back and you're offering someone something and not just always asking for something on your side. So it's cultivating your network so that you can make those pivots, because that is so true. I mean, I pivoted twice, maybe 3 times. and now I can say I'm finally where I really want to be. And as an attorney, this second thing that came to mind is taking ownership of your work. People always said that when you're coming up through law firms, take ownership of the project. And when I was younger, I didn't really quite get that. But now that I'm supervising other attorneys and I say, take ownership of the project, it's like, if there wasn't me, or if our managing partner was not involved and the buck stops with you, are you happy with this work product you just put out? Did you think through all the problems before you came to me? Because again, if you act as if this is your business, your personal entertainment business, is this how you would conduct things? Like take ownership of the project, meaning you don't understand something and the person ahead of you doesn't get it either. Use your resources and figure it out. Like, who else can you talk to that might be outside of your organization? What else can you research? What CLE can you attend? And just figure it out. Because not everyone you think might have the answer also might not have the answer. And everybody's looking at you to maybe bring an answer to the table. So I think if you can make your work quality work and you're actually thinking of yourself as a boss, be that boss lady, then your work will speak for itself. And it's going to be easier to make those pivots when you need to, because people can say, that chick knows what she's doing. Like, and even if you don't, that whole fake it till you make it, that is real. Like, people have, if you could work with confidence and you don't know what's going on, but you're figuring it out, it goes a long way.
So Jamila, Phylicia, pointed out that you started a movement. So one, thank you for being brave enough to stand up and to force our industry to stop for a minute and to really recognize that we were in a state of emergency and things needed to be paused for a second and everyone needed to pay attention. So you started this movement, The Show Must Be Paused. Can you please just talk to us about that? What was going on in your head and why was that so important for you to do?
Sure. So it started with Rihanna and I having a conversation. That's my partner and other co-founder. And, she was like, sis, I'm tired. That was the text message. Sis, I'm tired. So I was like, me too. I was like, I think I'm going to take an extra day. This weekend doesn't feel long enough. I just feel like so much is happening. It was, at the peak of the George Floyd, murder, and they were literally setting the city on fire, and it was protests in Brooklyn. It was just a lot. And I was in the middle of a rollout, and it was just like Zoom after Zoom. And where's the timeline? Where's marketing plan? And I'm like, hello, hi. Like there was just, I felt like there was a lack of sensitivity to what was happening. And I think it was because I was allowing it, I wasn't taking a mental day. I wasn't like, I need off to go protest because I didn't want to miss the Zoom. It just felt like it wasn't anyone really taking a second. And it started as a text message between friends like, hey, we're not going to go to work on Tuesday because, Monday just felt like a long weekend. It didn't really shake it up. Tuesday felt like it would disrupt the work week. And the message spread so fast. And then it ended up on social media and it ended up and it just the hashtag, and just as someone who does marketing, I'm like, I called Brie like, hey, so about the message, I was like, can you check Instagram, check the hashtag? And she was like, oh my God. And I was like, so now we have to have a call to action, right? Because our, network in the industry, to your point, they were like, we're going to have our company shut down, and they were with it. So it was like, okay, if companies are willing to stand with us, right, there needs to be a purpose, a reason, next steps. We immediately go into planning mode, and we planned a summit. In 72 hours, we had almost 2,000 people join on June 2nd, 2020. We met with artists, managers, attorneys, staff, interns, assistants, and just people that wanted to get involved, publicists, event planners, everybody, on just how they needed a reset. We took the day to reset. There was no big master plan on the second. There wasn't it was literally like a day, we literally needed a day to talk to each other and make it a safe space about how, things were affecting us. The pandemic, it was a lot. People of Black and brown, color dying at a faster rate from COVID. It was just so much. And the idea just felt a little tone deaf to still put out all the music. I know our job is to entertain the world, and the show must always go on. And it's, 24/7, but not that day. Not that day. We was like, it can pause. We didn't say stop, but just, it can pause. And I think it made companies reflect on, the structure of their organizations. We had $500 million donated within 48 hours publicly, and the money's getting broken up over time. But that was money that was there. It wasn't new money that was found. It was money that was there. And I think all the, the executives that came together and started these ERG groups and took on the extra workload, that's what meant the most, because our job is hard enough. And now you've, dedicated yourself to your job, and also by dedicating yourself to the work of making, the business better when you leave than it is when you got in, and making sure there's a seat at the table for people that look like you and come from your same background. So my hat goes off to all the executives that not only have to run companies and run departments and have a team, but now they're making sure that, internships are available, that it's a better pay grade, that we're getting into the C-suite. It's double the work. but we signed up for it. You know, it's the long haul, and, you know, a year and change later, it's completely changed my life. Work that I set out to do for others, you know, has really opened my eyes, and I feel like I'm in a music business now with purpose. So I'm very grateful for what Brianna and I started in a pandemic, and I look forward to, you know, moving forward once it's safe outside.
We are very grateful for you, sis. Very, very grateful. Okay, so there are listeners here who were super excited to hear from you because you are living their dream, right? Like you are in careers that they are aspiring to be in. So can each of you just give us a piece of advice for our listeners on how to pursue, you know, your career path? Like Phylicia, how, if I'm interested in PR, because that's where you started, right? If I'm interested in PR, what do I do? Where do I start? Alicia, if I want to be an entertainment attorney, what do I do? Where do I start? Jamila, if I want to go into marketing, what should I do? Where do I start? Help me.
Well, that is, again, interesting because I was English major, writing minor at Spelman, and I think Alicia knows that's liberal arts. There was no PR department. And if I'm going to be really honest, I didn't know that PR even existed. I was in the cafeteria one day and it said, looking for English and journalism majors for a publicity internship at CNN. And that was the eureka moment in my life. And so it kind of goes back to what we said earlier about networking and being in the rooms that you think you want to be in. If you really know the music business is for you, then you have to be in the rooms. You have to network. You have to take the steps to not think it's just going to come to you, but place yourselves in positions to meet people, right? So if you're meeting people, then those opportunities come. I will say that when I moved to New York, again, I told you I had a fraudulent moment, but I met this woman, Terry Williams. She is the most profound Black publicist of our time. She had Miles Davis, she had Eddie Murphy, and I looked up her address and I knocked on her door like a psycho. I'm going to say that. I knocked on her door in New York, and I remember her assistant at the time coming to the door and saying, "Do you have a meeting?" I'm like, "Nope." But I went to Spelman. I had my whole little booklet ready, and she was just like, "Let her come in." And she sat with me. She's like, "I don't have any jobs here, but you can sit with me for a week." And she let me sit with her, and she gave me this book called A Personal Touch, right? That book, meaning, going back to what Alicia said, when you're networking, it's also being personal. It's also reconnecting, not just to say, can you get me tickets? It's reconnecting to make sure you know something personal about these people and that you can just stay in their lives. You know, a simple birthday text, a hello, goes a long way. But that personal touch was why I got the job at Universal and went from being a temp to a full-time employee. I think because I left letters. I left things that I saw in common. I remember this guy named Alvin Blanco, who went to UVA, but was also a member of a Greek organization, as I am a member of Delta Sigma Theta. And literally, I left a note and saying, "Hey, I'm Greek, call me back." And I know that sounds trivial, but it's really important to understand what it means to keep these connections and these conversations going over and over again. So the advice is, if you want to be in the industry, figure out how to be in the rooms to continue to uplift your contacts, your connections, but also uplift yourself and know the job. You know, please know the job. I think Jamila said it earlier, things are happening and people are like, "Oh, I'm a publicist now." I'm like, that one red carpet does not make for publicists, okay? So understand what it means to be in a career. Understand the career of a publicist. Understand what the goals are. You know, understand we're creating brand narratives and stories, and we're also on the phone all the time and we're stopping stories. You know, there's more to that. But also understand that you can be more than a publicist, which is what I taught myself too. Like, I'm more than that. I'm curious. It's okay to be curious. And as you become curious, do it again. Go understand what marketing is. Make sure you understand fundamentally all the different, you know, resources in your building, but understand the departments, how they function, how do they interwork with each other, because we're a team for a reason. You know what I'm saying? So don't think you can understand a business and not understand every part and dimension of what's going on, from international to creative, you know what I'm saying, to syncs. Like, understand all the things, because by learning those things, you're only going to become better. So I started here as a publicist. Now I'm here as head of urban music. And like you said, you never know where the pivot's going to take you, but the pivot is because you're in the rooms and you're getting the advice and you're making sure you're networking and constantly staying in touch with the people that not only you want to care about, you know what I'm saying, but people that are going to care about you as you matriculate, as, you know, Jamila said, through this experience. So that's my take on being a publicist, I guess.
I would say my advice to someone wanting to get into marketing is there's no handbook. So I'm gonna start there. And no one can teach you how to be creative, you know, and I will say it's important to understand the job. You know, like Felicia just said, you have to understand the job to connect the dots, to drive awareness, to sell records. And the minute you understand that the job is just not to be around the artists and like local parties and like that. You have to be able to strategize, plan, and sell records. If you are not a salesman, this is not the department for you. I think it's important to be able to push yourself past your own boundaries, be open to feedback, be willing to work well with others and listen to the artist because it's their product first. And I think that you have to understand that the key to marketing is you decide what the narrative is, and you have to be confident in every decision you make. Every day, when a manager is asking you a question, an artist is asking a question, each department is like, what time is the song coming out? You have to decide time. Everything is your call. And it's important to be knowledgeable, listen to the music, understand other people's roles. You know, a part of what makes me good at my job is I understand what a publicist is, what radio does, what legal does, what syncs does, you know, what the streaming department does, what the GM does, what the president does, right? Like you have to understand the building in order to move the building. So I never stop learning. So as a marketer, I observe people, trends, and that includes internally. Get to know your company, understand your organization structure, understand what the team is good at, and be able to let people do what they're great at. And you have to push people. So it's not about just motivating yourself. If you want to get into marketing, you're going to have to be able to sell and motivate others every day. In a nutshell.
Y'all are dropping the gems. Ooh. So for entertainment, being an entertainment lawyer, certainly be in the place where entertainment lawyers are. I remember Byron Kirkland first told me, girl, you got to go to Beasley if you want a job in being an entertainment lawyer. I was like, I only have, $900. I had just came to New York looking for that job. And just like Phylicia, I knocked on a random door and stayed persistent. I was like, I know I don't have an appointment, but he needs to talk to me. And persistence paid off. And taking the advice of Byron, scrounging together money to be in the right place where I needed to be. So I can say that my first trip to Beasley ended up in a job combined with my persistence in landing a job. So, but then once you get the door open, it's like, okay, I have to stay there. So for a lawyer, you really have to pay attention to detail. You have to know how to communicate well in writing and verbally, but mostly in writing. I cannot tell you how many times I have said, oh, I'll send your resume to someone. And then I stopped because I saw the cover letter and I thought, I'm not sending this to my colleague. As soon as she sees this grammatical mistake or, they used a big word in the wrong way, no job, I'm sorry. And I'm not also putting my own reputation on the line. So for a lawyer, you have to know how to write well. Like even if you went to a rinky-dink law school, you were taught how to write like a lawyer. So even if we're homegirls, I expect the same level of professional courtesy to come through in your writing. So that's key. I said persistence, writing skills, being in the place where other attorneys are, and being persistent is key. And that network, the relationship, you have to stay in touch with people. You just never know when they're in need of someone. I can think of Julian Petty. I remember Julian was looking for a job, and he was that squeaky wheel that got the grease. I saw many resumes come through, and the guy we worked with at the time, he's like, who should I pay attention to? So you should pay attention to this dude, Julian. This brother calls every day. He's chatting me up. He's just trying to get in good with anybody. And I appreciated that. And I thought, if this dude comes in, he's going to work. And what is he now? He's like the head of business legal affairs at Warner.
Yes, he's an amazing person. Yes, you're right.
Exactly,
Family man,
right.
Everything. Exactly. Full circle.
So that totally helped. The person that is going to work hard because they're proving it to you every step of the way.
Well, ladies, I could talk to you three all day and all night. And I'm hoping that, someday soon we can get together so we can toast, and just celebrate you because you all are amazing. And I just want to thank you. I want to thank you for all that you are doing in this music industry for women, for, executives of color, for artists, for songwriters, for composers, for everyone. Like you guys are working hard. And not only are you, you are ASCAP's 2021 Women Behind the Music, But not only are you women behind the music, you are also women on the front lines of this industry. And we are super grateful to you. We will continue to be your biggest cheerleaders. And we know that you are only just beginning to make your mark. So thank you, thank you, thank you for your time this afternoon, and congratulations.
Thank you so much. And again, it's an honor to be amongst you all. Okay, love you all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Cinnamon.
Bye.